What I buried for Rick Harrison under the secret tunnels of his is still haunting me every night. It wasn't just an item or a mission I was given, but a part of a memory I've never dared to tell anyone, until today. Every time I think back, my heart races faster, as if the past is trying to pull me back to where it all began. The place where everything started. Have you ever experienced something that kept you awake every night, haunting you relentlessly? If so, leave a 1 in the comments below. If not, comment 0. I really want to know if I'm the only one carrying such strange secrets. And if you're curious about this story, or simply want to support me in continuing to share things no one else dares to, don't forget to hit subscribe. Enjoy the video, and get ready, because what's about to be revealed is not for the faint of heart. Chapter 1. The Secret Door, Under the Pawn Shop. Rick Harrison, the man famous for his bright smile and signature polo shirt, always appears confidently among thousands of antiques at the famous gold and silver pawn shop. But behind the cameras, where no one dares to venture, there's a cold, silent steel door that never appears in any of the shop's blueprints. This door hides behind the shelves in the storage room, a place where former employees, some who left for health reasons, others who mysteriously disappeared from the staff list, often whisper about it. When asked, Rick just chuckles and insists it's simply a storage area for discarded items. But no one is allowed to step past that threshold anymore. In 2015, a magazine released a chilling article titled "The Mysterious Unregistered Infrastructure Beneath the Pawn Shop." Just 36 hours later, the article was taken down. The content of the article pointed out anomalies in the ground structure beneath the shop, which was over 3 meters thicker than the surrounding areas, with no geological explanation for it. A retired construction engineer confirmed that he had once been hired to reinforce the foundation at the back of the shop. However, when he arrived, he realized they weren't reinforcing anything. They were building a new level underground. He described it not as a storage area, but as a vault to hide something. A Reddit thread titled, "What's Beneath Rick's Pawn Shop?" was posted by someone claiming to be a former night security guard at Gold and Silver. This person recounted that late at night, they would often see strangers entering the storage room through the secret door and disappearing without a word. The door would occasionally make metallic sounds, like the clanging of a barrel or chains being dragged, accompanied by a strange, musty smell, reminiscent of an old museum. The theories about what's hidden inside that door grew increasingly mysterious. Some people speculated that it could be illegal items, stolen artifacts, or even forgotten religious relics. The story took a different turn when a chef was tasked with transporting items for Rick's special events. One night, he was summoned to Rick's office and given the task of carrying a wooden crate over 6 feet long down to the lower level. The crate had no labels and was covered with a tarp. An unfamiliar man dressed in black accompanied him and signaled to push the cart toward the steel door. The door didn't open with a key, but with a code that no one had ever seen. As they entered, the air in the room was thick, like a long breath held after years of confinement. They walked down a 30-foot corridor, where the fluorescent lights flickered not because of a malfunction, but as if they sensed movement. At the end of the hallway was an elevator with no floor numbers, just a single button to go down. The man accompanying him said only one thing: "When you go down there, you leave a part of yourself behind." These words weren't a threat or a warning, but felt like part of a ritual. When they reached the bottom, he was led to an empty square in the center of the room, where the cement floor still showed signs of being freshly dried. The man took a key from his pocket and opened the wooden crate. But before turning away, he caught a glimpse of a strange object wrapped in red fabric with golden and silver symbols. After burying the object beneath the concrete, two other men entered. One scattered salt around the floor, and the other burned a silver item before leaving without saying a word. 3 days later, the western tunnel was sealed permanently. The steel door never opened again. When they met again in the kitchen, Rick only asked one question. "Did you sleep well?" From that moment on, the chef never cooked for the pawn shop again, and every night before he slept, he dreamed of a door with no handle, a door that no one entered, no one left, but somehow, it still seemed to breathe. Chapter 2. The Silence in the Elevator. The interior of the service elevator at the gold and silver pawn shop is unremarkable to outsiders. A smooth metal wall, a single control button with no floor numbers, and a card reader set diagonally in the bottom right corner. But for those who have used it, it's not just a means of transport. It's a gateway between two worlds, a place where everything can be appraised and where all value is determined by the silence in the basement. This elevator connects directly from the back kitchen of the restaurant Rick opened in 2017, where special meals are served to select guests, down to 3 concrete rooms that city blueprints never recorded. Only 3 key cards can activate this elevator, one held by Rick, one for technical supervision, and one for the protagonist, which was temporarily given during a mysterious event in 2018, the event that sparked all those haunting memories. That night, Las Vegas was hot and stifling. The kitchen had just completed its second service, but the meticulously prepared dishes were not placed on the public tables. The protagonist was given orders to take a shipment down to the lower level to room 3. The supervisor handed him the key card and gave vague instructions. If the elevator stops, stand still, don't call out, don't say anything, just wait. When the elevator doors closed, everything seemed normal. The dim lighting, the faint hum of the ventilation fan, and the handcart standing still. However, just about 5 seconds after the elevator started descending, it suddenly stopped without any jolt or alarm. The light inside shifted from warm yellow to a pale blue, like in a museum or a lab. For the next 17 minutes and 23 seconds, there was no signal, no phone service, no cameras operating, and no indicator lights. But when he asked later, a security guard revealed that the video footage of the entire event had been extracted but vanished from the internal system less than an hour after the event ended. No copies, no investigation orders. The feeling in the elevator wasn't fear, but an unusual awareness, as if time itself was distorted. The clock still ticked every minute, but his mind felt as if it were floating. And then the smell appeared. Faint, but enough for someone with basic medical training to recognize: formaldehyde. This chemical, used to preserve corpses or treat archaeological samples, wafted through like a thin veil of smoke, then immediately clung to his clothes, mask, and even his hair. He looked around, but the elevator was completely sealed, with no vents or air ducts. A later theory suggested that this underground area had once been used to store unidentified items, particularly artifacts from post-war Europe. These were items no one wanted to acknowledge, hidden away before deciding whether they could be revealed to the public or buried forever. He didn't mention any specific names, but the way he emphasized the phrase European art made it clear that these weren't harmless landscape paintings. Darker theories began to spread on secret forums. The elevator was no longer just a means of transport. It was a transitional space, much like how archaeologists temporarily store sensitive artifacts in pressure-controlled chambers before exposing them to the natural environment. It might not have been leaking formaldehyde from the elevator, but something from the item he was transporting, a mummified artifact, a container of classified information, or even a body part carefully wrapped in layers of material. Then, at the 18th minute, the elevator began moving again without any warning, without a beep. The blue light flickered out, and the white light returned, as if nothing had happened. The door opened below, revealing a cold concrete corridor, so quiet that he could hear the wheels of the cart rolling on the floor. No one was waiting. No one greeted him. Only a note taped to the wall. Place the crate in room 3. Do not linger. He followed the instructions, placing the wooden crate, covered in a fine layer of dust, in the middle of room 3. The lights in the room didn't turn on automatically. There were no visible cameras, but as he was leaving, he heard the faint sound of footsteps from behind the wall. Not the sound of rats, not a hallucination, but footsteps, as if someone was moving inside, separated by a concrete wall at least a meter thick. On the way back up, the elevator worked normally, but the smell of formaldehyde still clung to his clothes for days afterward. Even after washing and changing, it remained as fresh as if it had just appeared. It felt as though everything he had taken down there had also left a part of him behind. Chapter 3. What I Buried for Rick. In October 2019, the air in Las Vegas was dry and stifling, as if the entire desert was holding something back that it didn't want to reveal. One Wednesday morning, a day when the pawn shop was less crowded than usual, Rick showed up earlier than usual. But this time, he didn't have his familiar relaxed expression. He wore a tense look, his eyes constantly glancing at the surveillance cameras. The protagonist, the narrator, was accustomed to many strange things at the shop. However, that morning carried a different weight. It wasn't just because Rick had given a direct order, but because a stranger appeared in the break room. This man was about 6 feet tall, dressed in a classic leather jacket and polished black shoes, an uncommon sight in Las Vegas. His hair was pure white, but there were no other signs of aging. No one at the shop had ever seen him before, and no one dared to ask. He simply leaned against the wall, staring at a black box in the center of the room, 2 meters long, half a meter tall, and as heavy as a solid block of stone. Rick only said one thing. Don't open it. Don't ask. Bury it in the west vault. Once you're done, lock it. No one is to enter there again. No paperwork, no shipping code, no receipts. The 4 chosen individuals, including the protagonist, had to use a simple pulley system to lower the crate into the underground vault through the back service door. Every movement was closely monitored by the stranger and 2 security guards without badges. Passing through the kitchen, no one spoke. Not a whisper was heard, only the sound of metal grinding on rubber wheels and the unlocking of the vault door with the key card, a card only Rick possessed. The West Room was the least visited of the 3 underground concrete rooms. Typically, this room was locked with heavy chains and a padlock, but that day, the door was open. There were no lights, no visible cameras, just a pile of dry cement ready to be used, freshly stacked bags of cement in the corner, and construction tools laid out, prepared in advance. Three days later, the entire West Vault was permanently sealed. Rick ordered the steel door to be welded shut from the outside. No one, including the protagonist, was allowed down there again. The keycard was revoked, and all video footage of the process was deleted from the security system within 24 hours. But what truly made the protagonist shudder didn't come from Rick. but from an internal report from the Smithsonian at the beginning of 2020. The brief bulletin simply stated, "A military artifact once belonging to Napoleon's army has been confirmed missing from a private museum system in Europe since September 2019. The artifact was previously displayed at a private exhibition in Switzerland and was last seen at a private fair in Las Vegas." The final sentence, "The artifact has yet to reappear. Experts are concerned that it may have been permanently erased from circulation." There were no images, no detailed descriptions, only a theory that later circulated within archaeological circles. The artifact was not a mere display item, but rather an ancient military device or a mummified body part, kept as a symbol in post-war mystical rituals. Some more extreme theories even suggested that it was part of the emperor's reliquary, something Napoleon had ordered to be destroyed but was never found. If that is true, if what lay within that box was tied to a dark part of history, where art, war, and the mystical intertwine, then Rick's decision wasn't just to keep a secret, it was to seal it away. The big question remains, what could be so valuable that Rick never wanted it to surface again? And why would a pawn shop owner, accustomed to appraising everything, choose to bury forever an item that couldn't be sold? Chapter 4. The Buyer Who Never Speaks. In the world of antique dealing, there are customs that are never codified into rules, yet they operate with a chilling precision, like the gears of a Swiss watch. One of these strange customs is the appearance of an unnamed man who never speaks a word and never looks back. He arrives like a marker in time. Every year, on the exact day of August 8th, a silver Rolls-Royce with European license plates would appear in front of the gold and silver pawn shop. Never a minute early or late, without warning. The driver never leaves the car, and the only one to step out is the tall man, dressed in a high-collared black suit and leather gloves. He says nothing, makes no gestures, and doesn't glance at anything. He simply walks straight into the store, places a sealed black velvet box on the counter, always tightly closed, and disappears through the service door leading into the basement. The time he spent in the basement never exceeded 5 minutes. No one ever asked questions because no one was allowed to. The narrator had witnessed this scene twice. The first time was in 2017 when Rick left the shop at 10 o'clock a.m. telling the staff that he had a meeting with the city. However, just an hour later, the technical area camera recorded footage of Rick standing next to the elevator, keycard in hand, waiting for the nameless man. The troubling part was, that footage was never entered into the internal memory. It only appeared once on the live feed and then vanished as if it had never existed. The man in black always left empty-handed. No briefcase, no luggage, no belongings. But a few days later, the store's POSO system would register a payment of $1.4 million, labeled as long-term artifact maintenance. The only note attached was ND-NAP. Those in the industry knew that ND could stand for not revealed, while NAP might be an abbreviation for Napoleon. The following year, on August 8th, the Rolls-Royce arrived again, and the velvet box was placed on Rick's counter. This time, the system recorded $1.2 million with a similar description: Restoration Contract Cycle 2. No one knew which cycle was being referred to, and still, no items were recorded as being sold. A former finance employee who left in 2020 revealed, "I once asked Rick about those payments. He just smiled and said, 'There are some things we shouldn't own, but we certainly shouldn't let others own them either.'" That phrase, from a normal business standpoint, seemed like just a business philosophy. But for those who had been down to the vault, those who had seen Rick seal things with cement, those who had smelled the faint scent of formaldehyde in the air. That phrase took on a different meaning. A theory began to circulate among former employees of the shop that the man in black represented a private preservation organization, funded by secret heritage funds from Europe. Their mission was to recover or ransom artifacts stolen after World War II before they fell into the hands of private collectors or extremist groups. These items could not appear in public, could not be auctioned, and could not be transported through normal means. They didn't want to reclaim the artifacts, they only wanted to ensure they weren't used. If this theory is true, then Rick, known for his ability to appraise anything, was the guardian of items that no one dared to value. An even stranger theory, which circulated on Reddit in 2021, suggested that the black velvet box was not a gift, but rather an annual renewal of a binding agreement, confirming that Rick still kept the artifact secure. The man in black would descend to the vault simply to check the seals, much like how archaeologists inspect ancient tombs to ensure no one has tampered with the original structure. The lingering question remains: what could be so dangerous that it needs to be sealed in a concrete vault beneath layers of cement, with annual payments just to ensure it is never opened? Chapter 5. No paperwork, no name. Not every item in the gold and silver pawn shop is labeled, appraised, or entered into the system. Some objects, despite their incredibly high value, exist like ghosts, without paperwork, without names, without photos, and without explanations. In the fall of 2020, the protagonist, who had once transported and maintained the technical areas beneath the shop, discovered a folded piece of paper hidden behind an old vent in the east vault. At the time, he was checking the humidity of the concrete walls because the leak detection system had continuously been malfunctioning. The small piece of paper, no bigger than the palm of his hand, bore a hand-drawn sketch in dark brown ink, likely dried from blood, not just any ordinary stain. The faint metallic scent still lingered, and the lines were not shaky, but cold and deliberate. The drawing was of a dagger, its blade marked with a symbol of a triangle encircled by a ring, within which were ancient Greek characters. Anyone familiar with secret societies would immediately recognize it as the legendary symbol of the Golden Dawn, a society famous for its ritual magic and veneration of esoteric knowledge. This object was not listed in any inventory. No one knew where it came from or when it appeared, but theories began to spread after a quiet event in 2021. A letter printed on paper with the seal of the Department of Archaeology, University of Cambridge, addressed directly to Rick Harrison, was accidentally seen by someone in the store but was never seen again. In the letter, Professor Edward Malvin, an expert in Hellenistic religious archaeology, requested that Rick return the blade, which was believed to be the final spiritual relic of the TMIC dynasty. No one knew if Rick ever responded, but the strange thing was that a week later, all the surveillance cameras in the eastern section were replaced. The technical staff were reassigned or fired, and the protagonist was informed that that area was no longer under his responsibility. Many theories were proposed on Reddit, in independent investigative groups, and even in satirical articles on Vice and Atlas Obscura. Some people claim that it is the dagger used in Cleopatra's final ritual before her suicide, carrying the last spiritual essence of the TMIC dynasty. Others believe the object is evidence of a failed ritual involving a group of ascetics in Venice in 1889, which led to the deaths of 7 people. The question remains, why would Rick Harrison, a reputable antiquities dealer, keep an item that no one knows, no one values, and no one dares to touch? Is it simply because of its historical value? Or is there something more to it? One theory quietly discussed among Western antiquities scholars suggests that Rick is not just a collector. He may be the guardian of things that should not exist, the preserver of what humanity once created but then rejected. It's understandable why he wouldn't make the item public. An artifact that was once the center of a bloody ritual, carrying a curse or unstable spiritual energy, cannot be bought, sold, displayed, or traded. But it also cannot be destroyed, for the consequences of doing so would be unpredictable. What haunted the protagonist was not just that he had touched that sketch with his bare hands, but what he could not understand. Because afterward, he began to dream of a limestone door inscribed with ancient Greek letters opening in the middle of the desert, and a shadow without eyes stepping out of the void. Whether the dream was related to the artifact was unverifiable, but since that day he never went back to the eastern area again. And perhaps what frightened him most was that Rick never asked about the sketch, even though the cameras must have recorded the moment he found it. Maybe Rick already knew. Maybe Rick didn't need to know, because the things kept in a vault without paperwork, without a name, don't need an introduction. They simply exist. Things that cannot be named, cannot be controlled, but they can still be owned. The end. The ashes of oblivion. One day, while servicing the old ventilation system, the chef discovered a hand-drawn sketch, the paper yellowed with age, bloodstains drying on the left edge. The drawing depicted a dagger with a triangular symbol surrounded by a circle. A clear emblem of the Golden Dawn, a secret society he had once considered dangerous a century ago. He said nothing to anyone. But from that day forward, he began to dream every night. The dream was a recurring one, a room without doors, a nameless box, and a faint purple light glowing from within. In the dream, he never opened the box, but he knew exactly what was inside. Not a weapon, not an artifact, but a fragment of human memory sealed away. In 2021, an archaeologist from the University of Cambridge had sent a private letter to Rick requesting the return of an artifact said to be the final spiritual relic of the TMIC dynasty. There was no response, but just a week later, the entire camera system in the back area was replaced. A maintenance worker was fired, and the chef was no longer allowed access to the technical area. No one said a word because everyone understood. Rick didn't need to explain. Now the chef had moved on from the world of old items, humorous bartering, and the smiles on television. But sometimes, in his half-dreaming sleep, he still hears the faint sound of metal scraping against the crumbling cement. A vague echo, as if something is gently tapping against the thick concrete layers. Rick still appears on TV. That familiar smile, his sarcastic tone, eyes seemingly harmless. But for those who have been down to the basement, who stood before the welded door, who felt the cold emanating from the earth beneath Las Vegas, they know. They know there are items that will never be displayed. There are stories that will never make it onto Pawn Stars. And there are nameless boxes buried beneath the earth, never to be opened. For the chef, everything has now become a haunting memory. A nameless box, a windowless vault, an object that will never be seen again. And if, one day, that layer of cement cracks, perhaps the only thing left to do is bury it again, deeper, without a trace, without leaving a memory. Do you believe that Rick Harrison's kitchen is merely a place to prepare meals? The truth is far more complex. One chef once stepped into that space, and what he discovered wasn't just the secret of a kitchen, but a hidden network that prevented him from leaving with peace of mind. A shadowy secret that even outsiders were never meant to know. From cryptic antiques to strange encounters, everything in that kitchen has its own distinct reason. Chapter 1. The Pantry That Should Not Exist. At the heart of Gold and Silver Pawn, nothing is ordinary. Everything is meticulously controlled, especially the kitchen area. This is not an ordinary staff kitchen, not just a place to prepare meals for a group, but a separate, secret space, heavily guarded, like a restricted area with limited access. Not everyone knows of its existence, and if they do, it's only through whispered rumors from those who know the truth. Those who have entered never speak of anything specific. Once, during a scheduled food delivery, the protagonist, a newcomer, accidentally discovered a small door hidden behind a freezer. This door, by standard design, was an inexplicable anomaly. It wasn't in any of the blueprints, nor was it in the official records approved by the city of Las Vegas for this area in 2009. His gaze lingered on the door for a few seconds. It wasn't like any door he had ever seen in the kitchen, not the kind typically used for storing utensils or food. It looked old, made of dark wood, a stark contrast to the modern materials used in the rest of the kitchen. Even stranger, there was no handle or lock on the door, only a strange symbol carved deeply into the surface, seemingly unnoticed by anyone. A sign of power, or perhaps simply a marker of an area off-limits to outsiders. A few minutes later, when he glanced back, the door was gone, as if it had never existed. Although he said nothing, there was an undeniable feeling that something was wrong behind that wall, something he was never meant to know. The theories surrounding this door became increasingly mysterious. Some people said it was a space used to store undisclosed items, rare artifacts with unverifiable origins, or confiscated relics that could not be revealed to the world. These items might be under legal surveillance or simply objects that were not allowed to be listed in the inventory of a legitimate store. The protagonist also heard some rumors from a seasoned employee about this area. He whispered, "No one is allowed in there without Rick's permission. There was a chef who tried to sneak in before." And the very next day, he was fired immediately. There was even a story that after the incident, the entire lock system in the kitchen area was replaced, and only people with Rick's unique fingerprint could open these doors. No one knew exactly what was being hidden behind that wall, but the rumors spread like wildfire. One prominent theory suggested that this area wasn't for storing food, but rather for keeping artifacts that Rick and his associates couldn't publicly display in the shop. Perhaps they were items lost from illegal transactions, or valuable antiques with origins that couldn't be legally proven. A 2012 report from Las Vegas Weekly did nothing to quell the public's curiosity. The report indicated that Gold and Silver Pawn had been investigated for signs of owning artifacts with unverified origins. The investigation was said to have ended after a brief period, but this information left a lingering question mark for those curious about the unknown underground activities. Did Rick Harrison and his team partake in a secret antique trafficking network? Or were these simply valuable items he found at auctions and decided to keep for himself? Once again, these theories are not proven truths, but they are questions that cannot be avoided, especially when those involved remain silent on the matter. Anyone who has ever had the opportunity to work in Rick Harrison's kitchen knows that it is far from ordinary. Everything has its own reason, and every small detail could conceal a much larger secret. And perhaps the secret of that door and what it hides will never be fully revealed. But one thing is clear. If you happen to stand in front of it, the strange and unsettling feeling will be unforgettable. The secrets left untold, the places no one is allowed to enter, All of these are things that only those who truly belong to Rick Harrison's world can understand. Chapter 2: The Silver Knife and the Golden Lie. Rick Harrison's kitchen, a space reserved for a select few, always harbors strange things that few could ever imagine. What happens in this kitchen is not just about meals, but part of a story full of mystery and inexplicable events. There is a set of original Masamune Japanese knives, worth nearly $70,000. However, no one has ever seen them used for any meal at Gold and Silver Pawn. These knives, with their razor-sharp blades and meticulous craftsmanship, are not meant for slicing fruit or cutting meat. They are symbols of a secret world, where their value transcends any practical purpose. A guest chef from Tokyo who came to Las Vegas and attended a private dinner hosted by Rick Harrison has been mentioned in some of the strange stories surrounding this kitchen. After the dinner, he disappeared from social media, and shortly afterward, his restaurant in Tokyo temporarily shut down, sparking mysterious rumors. People in the culinary and high society circles began whispering that the chef had recognized the Masamune knives, and no one could guess their connection to the large-scale theft of antiques from a museum in Osaka in 1996. The rumors started to spread like wildfire, and unresolved questions began to surface. How could such an expensive and rare set of knives end up in the kitchen of a pawn shop like Gold and Silver Pawn? Could these knives have been stolen from a famous museum in Japan? If so, why would Rick keep them in his kitchen instead of auctioning them off like other items? Things became more complicated when insiders began to speculate that the Masamune knives weren't the only items with a shady history in Rick's kitchen. Other rare items, possibly works of art or antiques, were also rumored to be hidden in this kitchen, never to be displayed publicly. Some believed that these items held value not just financially, but also concealed dark stories behind them. The question arose, could these be items once traded illegally by the elite in private spaces like this kitchen? Rick Harrison chose to remain silent on the matter. He declined to comment on the knives, even as the story surrounding them quickly gained attention. Just a week after the incident, the entire set of Masamune knives was moved into a safe in Rick's office. The safe's door was locked, and since then, no one has been allowed to touch them. Those working at Gold and Silver Pawn knew this was a sign that the item had transcended normal boundaries, becoming an artifact that even Rick didn't want anyone to handle. This was not unusual for Rick, who was known for his secretive transactions and items that could be described as extraordinary. On the FBI's side, a document from 2004 revealed that many rare items had been traded through private kitchens. These private kitchens were exclusive spaces for the elite and those with the means to pay. In these private kitchens, illegal transactions took place in the shadows. According to this report, not only valuable artifacts are stored in these secret spaces, but also items that the elite prefer to keep hidden. Notably, some of these items have appeared at private parties hosted by individuals like Rick Harrison. You might wonder why such items exist in the first place. Why would the Masamune blades, extremely valuable artifacts, be secretly kept in the kitchens of people like Rick Harrison? These questions remain unanswered. But one thing is clear. These transactions, these items, are not something just anyone can access. Perhaps they belong to another world, one where such objects can never see the public light of day, a world only accessible to and controlled by the powerful and influential. So what happened to the Japanese chef who recognized the Masamune blades? Was he threatened into staying silent about what he discovered? Or was he simply a victim of a game he couldn't escape? These questions remain unanswered, and the story of the Masamune blades and the secrets behind them continues to haunt those who have witnessed the truth. And in the shadows of these secret dealings, hidden behind gold and silver pawn, perhaps Rick Harrison is still in possession of priceless items the world has never known. Items even the FBI can't trace. Chapter 3. Smoke Behind the Stove. One night, as the lights dimmed and the humid air of Las Vegas settled, gold and silver pawn once again became the center of a discreet gathering, an event reserved exclusively for VIP guests, recognizable only to insiders. Rick Harrison's kitchen, usually used for staff meals, suddenly fell silent and was tightly locked. No one was allowed in. No sound came from the room, except for a chilling, eerie silence. At exactly 9:41 p.m., while the party unfolded in a separate private area, all the lights in the kitchen suddenly went out. Darkness engulfed a space that was usually bright, lit by the everyday routines of ordinary meals. The chef, the central figure in this story, had been working later than usual. He had a few personal tasks to finish, so he chose to stay after hours. But it was precisely this decision that turned him into an unwitting witness to an argument. Not between ordinary people, but between Rick and a man speaking French. Notably, he clearly remembered a phrase that was mentioned during the argument: provenance falsifier. The words cut through the stillness of the kitchen like a sharp blade, making everything feel truly strange and suspicious. In that moment, the chef couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease about what was unfolding. Why was there such a tense argument between Rick and a stranger? And why was the term provenance falsifier brought up? Did it have something to do with the valuable items Rick owned? Was he involved in illegal dealings of art? Were the high-value artifacts in his possession of questionable origin? But before he could think any further, something strange happened. The kitchen's security cameras, installed to monitor and protect the valuable items inside, suddenly shifted direction on their own. This was an unusual change from the system's default configuration, and the chef couldn't understand why it was happening. A sense of unease, a creeping fear began to take hold of him. Why were there such movements? Was someone trying to hide something, a moment or an action they didn't want anyone to see? The next day, things grew even more bizarre. Although the chef couldn't shake off the memory of the argument from the night before, everything seemed as if it had never happened. But when he inquired about the CCTV footage, the strangest thing occurred. All the data from the previous night had suddenly been corrupted and was irretrievable. Every recorded video, every image, gone. The feeling of unease shifted into an inevitable fear. Someone had interfered with the system, and it came as no surprise that this interference could have come from powerful individuals, people with the ability to hide anything. Soon after, the hard drive containing the camera system's data was quickly and quietly replaced, as if nothing had happened. All the chef could do at that moment was stand outside, observing what was unfolding, powerless to intervene. He couldn't comprehend why such strange changes were happening in a system that Rick Harrison always regarded as completely secure. This wasn't a random technical glitch. It was clear that someone was trying to conceal something significant. From here, theories began to spread like an undercurrent in the world of art collecting. Knowledgeable individuals started speculating that Rick might have been involved in the verification of the false provenance of a valuable collection of paintings that had once been stolen from European museums. These were famous works of art, items not only of immense financial value but also irreplaceable cultural treasures. However, all of this remained unconfirmed theory. No one dared to make any definitive claims, but the shadow of doubt continued to loom over everything related to Rick Harrison and the items he owned. The situation grew even more perplexing when a French art expert, who had previously been involved in art transactions with Rick, suddenly disappeared a few weeks later in Las Vegas. This only fueled suspicions that Rick himself, or those around him, might be involved in a larger conspiracy, a network trafficking in antiques and art with unclear origins. Did this art expert discover something he wasn't supposed to? Or was he merely a pawn removed from a game he couldn't escape? These questions remain unanswered. But for the chef, what he witnessed that night would forever be an indelible memory. The secrets, the arguments, and the strange anomalies in the security system made him realize that the gold and silver pawn shop was no ordinary antique store. Behind those walls, the transactions and mysteries could haunt him for the rest of his life. Chapter 4. The Man Who Dined in Silence. Every Thursday, as things at Gold and Silver Pawn proceeded with their usual rhythm, a puzzling event occurred. An older man, dressed in a light gray suit, would appear. The kitchen staff called him the Professor. No one knew his origins or why he specifically chose Thursday to visit. He was not an ordinary customer, and this became more evident every time he entered the kitchen through the back door, a passage reserved for a select few. This was a door known to very few in the store, and only individuals like Rick had the authority to open it for these special guests. The door seemed to be a gateway to another world, a world where the hidden secrets were known only to Rick. The man always sat in a secluded corner of the kitchen, where the lighting was deliberately dimmed. This spot was not chosen by chance. It was a place where he could maintain a discreet distance from others, avoiding the curious gazes of the staff. Strangely, he would only eat one dish. Oxtail soup, prepared according to an ancient French recipe, was not listed on the restaurant's official menu. This soup was only made upon Rick's explicit request and was reserved exclusively for this special guest. This raised questions among the staff. Why did Rick specifically order this dish for him? It was a dish that wasn't at all common on the menu, and of course, no one knew its origin. Only Rick and the Professor seemed to truly understand the reason behind these visits. Every time the man came, he ate in absolute silence, not saying a single word. His demeanor exuded calm, an eerie tranquility, as if he deliberately avoided drawing anyone's attention. No one had ever heard him speak. There were no interactions with the servers, and notably, he never paid the bill. Not a single coin, not a word of thanks. Only complete silence. After the meal, he would stand up, leave the kitchen without anyone daring to ask or follow him. But with each departure, something strange would happen. He would leave a silver dollar from 1794 on the table, as though that was the only way he knew to end his evening. The 1794 flowing hair silver dollar was no ordinary item. It is one of the rarest and most valuable coins in the world, with its worth potentially reaching up to $1.5 million if it is indeed an original. According to coin experts and numismatists, this coin is extremely difficult to find, as only a select few individuals own one. There is even a theory that this coin could be part of a priceless collection of artifacts that many in the world of art and coin collecting have been searching for over the years. And so the question arises, why would someone like the Professor choose to pay for a simple meal with such a priceless antique? For what purpose? This was a strange act that couldn't easily be explained by appearances alone. Was he trying to conceal some kind of transaction? A deal that no one could witness? Could the silver dollar be a symbol, a means to hide another item being exchanged in the shadows? These theories began to take shape in the chef's mind, and it seemed there were no satisfactory answers. Perhaps Rick Harrison had known about these transactions for a long time. The relationship between him and the professor was not a typical one between a restaurant owner and a customer. Their encounters took place in silence, yet carried a profound meaning that no one could fully understand. Surely Rick was no ordinary individual. He was a well-known figure in the world of collectors, having bought and sold thousands of antiques, many of which were of immeasurable value. But for the professor, things might be even more complicated. Perhaps the 1794 silver dollar he left behind was not the only valuable item involved. There could be another artifact, something truly significant hidden in the shadows. Stolen goods, traded artworks, or perhaps antiques that Rick and the professor were trying to conceal. These theories may seem far-fetched, but there's something in the professor's actions that makes them impossible to dismiss. Each time he came and left, the questions became more complicated. Why did he choose to pay with a valuable antique instead of cash, like the other customers? Was this a game between the two men? A game that outsiders could never understand? And was the silver dollar a message, a sign of something bigger, something we have yet to uncover? When the professor left, no one dared to follow him. No one dared to ask the questions they truly wanted to know, because in this world, there are secrets too great, too dangerous to explore. And perhaps the professor understood this better than anyone. What he left behind at Gold and Silver Pawn was not just a silver dollar, but a sign of a shadowy world that only those within it could truly comprehend. Chapter 5. The Recipe That Disappeared. There was a time when the kitchen of Gold and Silver Pawn was not only famous for its regular fares, but also for a peculiar dessert. Always served at private gatherings, creating an atmosphere of mystery and hidden implications. This dessert was called pawn cake, and it was not just an ordinary sweet treat. It was a symbol of intrigue, known only through whispers and the quiet admiration of VIPs like Cleonel. This cake had once been a signature dish, an essential part of every party Rick hosted, and only a select few knew its exact recipe. The three individuals who knew the secret of the pawn cake were Rick Harrison, a now-deceased chef, and Rick's personal assistant. Only these three had the privilege of passing down this secret recipe over the years. For outsiders, it could only be described as forbidden knowledge. This cake never appeared on the public menu at Gold and Silver Pawn. It was only served at private gatherings, where the guests were wealthy and influential individuals, those who could understand and appreciate its value. Every time the pawn pie made an appearance, it was not just a dessert, it was the highlight of the event. An element that made everyone feel as though they were stepping into a separate world, one filled with power and secrets. But after an important charity event in 2021, something strange happened. The pawn pie suddenly disappeared. No one ever saw it reappear at any gatherings, and no one was allowed to mention it. Even in whispered conversations among the staff, the term pawn cake was strictly forbidden, as if the cake had never existed at all. The disappearance of the cake not only left those who had tasted it bewildered, but also sparked a series of unanswered questions. Internal report records, leaked from an anonymous source, revealed that after the cake vanished, one employee attempted to replicate the recipe of this legendary dish. However, that very night, The employee was fired without any explanation or official notice. This not only puzzled the other kitchen staff, but also stirred a wave of speculation among the employees about the true reason behind this sudden decision. They wondered, why would a dessert provoke such a strong reaction? Why was it so secretive that even a simple recipe couldn't be replicated, even if it was just meant to serve customers? Amateur detectives, those who specialize in investigating unusual events, quickly began to trace the story's trail. One theory circulating among these circles was that the pawn cake might not just be an ordinary dessert. According to them, it was possible that the cake contained a special ingredient, perhaps one with ritualistic significance or tied to ancient religions that no one dared to reveal. These theories grew stronger when some individuals within the collecting community and amateur detectives began to connect the disappearance of the cake with ancient powers they believed could be linked to international transactions or even secret societies. The cake might not just be a dessert, but part of a larger plan, an element of a ritual or transaction that only the elite truly understand. Most amateur detectives believe that the pawn cake was not simply a sweet treat. It could have been a message subtly hidden in each slice. Perhaps the cake contained a rare ingredient known only to a select few. Or maybe the recipe was part of a tradition, an ancient rite that not everyone was entitled to partake in. These theories, although difficult to prove, possess a strange allure. They lead people to wonder if Rick Harrison is hiding a much bigger secret than he lets on. The question arises, could the disappearance of the pawn cake be linked to something more dangerous that Rick is concealing? A connection to an influential organization or group within the elite, a group that few dare to cross? Another question follows. How could a simple cake conceal an ancient ritual or religion that could change the lives of those involved? Could this recipe be the key to unlocking a door that outsiders will never know about? While these questions remain unanswered, one thing is certain. The disappearance of the pawn cake was no mere coincidence. And perhaps, with each passing year, the secrets behind this cake will gradually be revealed. Those who have been part of the world of gold and silver pawn know that sometimes what we see is just the surface. And perhaps what is truly hidden within Rick Harrison's culinary creations are the most troubling things of all. Epilogue: Heat Without Flame. Rick Harrison continues to appear on television, still the friendly man with the familiar smile that audiences have come to know. But in his kitchen, a space that should only hold the aroma of food, there remain traces of things that cannot be cooked. Secrets, anxieties, and unspoken silences. What has transpired in that kitchen is not the kind of story that everyone can easily comprehend. When someone steps in, there's always something lingering, something inexplicable. Hesitant glances, eyes that cannot meet. It feels as though the silence here is heavier than anything else, as if it's nurtured by things people cannot touch. The changes in Rick's kitchen are obvious. New systems have been installed. The surveillance cameras are no longer what they used to be, and new staff have replaced those who were once there. No one recalls those strange Thursday nights, when the sound of arguments between Rick and unidentified individuals still echoes in the minds of those who witnessed them. Everything unfolded in complete silence, as if it were all part of secret protocols known only to a select few. But no matter how things changed, the one constant was the strange feeling lingering in the hearts of those who had been there. This feeling wasn't just simple unease. It was a deeper emotion, unexplainable, as if from the moment they stepped in, nameless secrets had embedded themselves in their minds. Those dark nights, the people who came and went, no one truly knew what they carried or left behind. Whispers, theories, and haunting stories all became part of a memory no one dared to face. No one truly knew what had really happened in Rick Harrison's kitchen. Rumors were spread, baseless gossip circulated, but none of these could erase the memory of a place that was more than just a kitchen. It was a closed room, a vault of things no one was allowed to know. Transactions that couldn't be recorded, agreements that couldn't exist in the light of day. Surely, there was something that no one could understand, something unseen, and no matter how hard anyone tried, no one could truly uncover the truth behind the walls of that kitchen. But one thing was certain, undeniable. Rick Harrison's kitchen was not just a place for preparing meals. It was a room, a separate space where things could be altered, hidden, or manipulated in ways only those involved could truly comprehend. Anyone who has ever stepped inside couldn't help but be affected, even in the briefest of moments. And that is the price they pay for entering Rick's world, where what one sees is only the surface, and beneath it lies an entire network of secret dealings that no one can truly see. The story of this kitchen never ends. It simply becomes an eternal part of Rick Harrison's world, where nothing is ever truly as it seems. And that's all I can share with you today. Perhaps there are parts of the story that I'm still not ready to tell. Or perhaps I'm being watched. What lies buried beneath Rick Harrison's tunnels is not just material. It's part of a much larger secret, one that might one day be exposed or buried forever. What do you think? Do you believe stories like this actually exist? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want me to dive deeper into mysteries like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of the next chilling stories. See you in the next video. Remember, some things should be buried forever, but sometimes they are the very things that find their way to us first.